Welcome, everyone. You're listening to The Tim Laskus Show, and yes, I'm Tim Laskus, and this is episode 31. Today's featured guest is Sharon Bolt. Sharon is from the UK, and she has a awesome accent. I love it. You're going to love it, too. And Sharon is a publicity expert and founder of Get Free Publicity Today. She's contributed to more than 40 different local and national newspapers, magazines, television, radio stations, and she received over, get this, 1.5 million, I guess that's like 1 million pounds in the UK, in free publicity. So if you're sitting there, would you want over $1 million in free publicity? Raise your hand, stand up and go, yeah, me too. And so she tells you how to get your own free publicity without having to overpay and just fork out tons of cash. And unless you got wheelbarrows of cash sitting around that you can spend on advertising, which most of us don't, then this is the person you need to listen to. We also discuss her cute little dogs. They're called Parson Terriers. Does anybody know what a Parson Terrier is? If you go to her website, that's getfreepublicitytoday.com, and go to the About page, and you'll see pictures of her cute. She has 2 little Parson Terriers, and they're related to Jack Russell dogs. But anyway, this isn't a show about dogs, but we talk about dogs. And so get your warm cup of tea and get ready to enjoy this episode. And if you like it, please be sure to go and subscribe and review. Thank you. Take care.
The Tim Laskus Show, in search of entrepreneurial gold. Tim digs deep into the minds of his guests. Entertaining, down to earth, and informative. Now, here's your host, Tim Laskus.
Hello, everyone. Today's special guest is Sharon Bolt. Sharon, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Tim, for having me on your show. I'm really excited to be here.
For sure. It's a pleasure having you. And you were telling me about these cute little dogs you have called Parsons Terriers? What's that all about?
They're Parson Terriers, and they are, they're said to be the original Jack Russell. So, they're full of characters, and yes, they literally changed my life and career, because what happened was we got them when they were 8 weeks old, and they were just these little bundles of fluff that just fit in our hands. And then we thought, right, let's get them into puppy socialization classes. And because they were all so busy and full, I spoke to about 7 or 8 different dog trainers. And when I said I had these 2 male Parson Russell Terriers from the same litter, they all said to me, wow, that's the worst case scenario. You couldn't actually do anything worse than that. And you'll probably find that they will do whatever they want to do because they're blood related, and they will fight for the top dog position, whereby you'll probably need to rehome one. And I was devastated, and I thought, do you know what? That is not going to happen. There is no way that any one of these 2 little puppies are going anywhere. So I was on a mission, and that's how they changed my life and career at that time.
Wow, how devastating is that for someone to tell you to get rid of one?
Yeah,
That's
I
like
know.
Picking one of your children and saying
exactly.
bye.
How could you choose one of your children?
How dare that person? That's terrible. But it sounds like it all worked out, and it made a big shift in your life because of that.
It did. They are actually nearly 13 years of age now, and
wow.
They're just lovely dogs, just great fun to be with. I spend a lot of time with them. And they are just the best of friends. There was never a cross word between them, and they're just a joy to be with. But they really did teach me about dog training for sure.
Wow, well, that's a great story. And well, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, Sharon, aside from all the fun that you have with your dogs. But what do you do professionally, and what are you currently working on?
Well, I currently I'm working on creating some online publicity courses where I teach startup companies, entrepreneurs and business owners step by step how to get featured time and time again in the press. So it's like a hand-holding courses where it's full of plug and play templates and just explaining exactly how you do it. I mean, I've been featured now in the press for 10 plus years. So in that time, I've trialed and tested a lot of different ways of doing things and naturally spoken and actually interviewed a lot of journalists, because I think the key thing about getting publicity is getting inside the mind of the journalists. So in being able to tick their boxes and knowing what they're looking for. And that's all of this is what I've created now. And I'm just at the last throes of my courses now, and there's going to be 3 of them, and I'm looking to launch in about a month or 2.
Wow, how exciting. And as you're talking about getting publicity, I'm thinking about Richard Branson, and I don't know what he was advertising. Maybe it was his airline or something. He drove a tank through Times Square in New York City. That'll get you attention.
Oh, yeah. He's big on publicity, isn't he? And what I love about Richard Branson is he's really quirky, isn't he? So he really gets media attention, but he gets how the whole game works, because there is a game, there is a format, and there is a way of doing it.
Well, do you have any tips on, how to get some really quick publicity for some of the listeners?
Yeah, I think one of the main things to do is to come up with story ideas that are going to get journalists' attention. That's the thing. And your mindset has to be of how you can help the journalist, not how the journalist can help you. So that's the first thing that you need to do as your mindset. But one of the easiest ways to get not just local attention, but national and international attention is to see what's currently going on in the news. It's actually called newsjacking or piggybacking off the news. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by this. So say when we had this big news that Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, they split up. It obviously sent shockwaves across the world, so there was a lot of headlines regarding that. But with it came great opportunities for different business owners to get really good media attention. So, for an example, at that time, a parenting expert could come up with a story idea such as how to make sure your child doesn't think a divorce is their fault. Where if you was a divorce lawyer, you could come up with a story idea such as 7 steps to getting the best settlement from a divorce and still remaining friends. And then also a marriage or a relationship expert could come up with a story idea such as 5 sure signs that your marriage is heading for divorce. So as you can see, Tim, there's that one story, and then depending on which business that you're in, you can then hit the headlines and be current in line with what's going on.
Wow, I love that. So everyone should pay attention to what's happening out there in the world and not just kind of have your head in the sand and just working on your stuff, but what is happening and how do you make that connection?
That's right, Tim. And the thing to remember with journalists, they like things that are new and fresh and that are happening right now. So they're always asking themselves, if they're sent a pitch or a press release about a story idea, the question that they're asking themselves is, why now? What's relevant and what's current about this now? And how is it going to benefit my audience in a positive way? Is it going to be interesting? Is it going to be educational? So that's what they're interested in. So when you take something that is current and that's hit the headlines, and it doesn't have to be huge like that divorce that we just spoke about, it's just current affairs that are hitting the headlines and how you can then hook your story idea off that.
Well, I love that. And you mentioned that I guess as entrepreneurs or business owners should approach this in how we can help the journalist. Naturally, we're thinking, well, how can they help me get my message out there and get the name of my company out there? But you're saying is to really focus on how we can assist the journalist, and we'll also get our needs met. So how do we go about finding those journalists who do specific stories?
Well, the number one easiest way, I think, to find journalists is to read whatever it is that or listen to whatever you want to be featured in. So say there was a publication, a particular newspaper that you would say, oh, it'd just be ideal for you. Maybe it had your type of market so that you would love to be featured in that. So what I recommend that people do is to get that publication. So if it's a daily paper, for example, you get that daily paper every day for a minimum of 7 days. So you can start looking now at what types of stories they feature, what they include. So how many features do they have? And do they have, what type of angles do they like? So you are again starting to tick their boxes. But the great thing about when you're looking at these is that these journalists, they want your story ideas. I mean, they don't want story ideas that are going to just be about you and not going to benefit their audience, but they're looking for great story ideas. They're depending on it, in fact. So when you are able to look through these publications, you will quite easily find their email address. So you now have got their specific email address. So it's not a general one that you go to the website and it's inquiries or info or something like that. Sometimes they're picked up there, sometimes they're not. So that's what you're going to do, is you're going to get very specific and find the ideal person that's going to be relevant to what you want to pitch.
Wow. Now, do you ever find, either with yourself or with your clients, that some of these journalists, because they love that you've reached out to them and you've given them great content to publish, that when a new breaking story comes out, that they actually reach out to you first?
Oh,
does that happen?
Definitely. And these are one of the many things that I'm teaching in the courses, Tim, because getting in their little black book means that you are constantly approached. So you don't have to be coming up and thinking of story ideas. The media actually need good people and certainly niche experts in so many different fields in order to add some flavour and some credibility to their features and stories. So they are looking for people like us to feature. So, of course, this is what we have to get in place. When we know how to present ourselves and how to go about it, and we get in that little black book, well, it actually starts to run itself.
Wow. And that's great. And so then you have to do less work because you're already kind of in the group of journalists and they know that you're the expert and the go-to person. So how did you get into PR?
Wow, it was interesting, this, Tim, because people are quite shocked, actually, when I first tell them about my first media appearance. Because what happened is I was interviewed as a dog training expert and answering dog training questions on a national radio station. It's BBC Radio 2 here in the UK, when I actually was working in complementary therapies. So I didn't actually have a dog training business, but I had this huge passion about dog training. I'd seen the differences that I was making with my own dogs, and I was introducing consultations with my therapy clients and their dogs. And then what happened was I heard on this radio station that they were actually looking for a dog training expert to feature on the show the following week. And I thought to myself, do you know what? I can do that. I've got something to share. I've got some really good information that I can give to people that's going to make a difference. So what I did, Tim, is I sat down and I wrote this email, and I knew that I needed to make it all about them and their listeners. So that's what I did. The whole email was about how I could benefit their listeners and why certain things were happening. Well, I sent that off and I got nothing back. So a couple of days passed, and again, listening to the radio station, and the DJ said, well, what we're going to do also in that feature of dog training next week is we're going to talk about overweight dogs. And what they actually said, their words were podgy dogs. So I thought, do you know what? I can do that. I know about nutrition. I know about nutrition with dogs too. And I thought, yes, I'm going to go for that. So in the subject header this time round, in the email I sent, I put, podgy dogs, I'm your girl. And then I sent this email again explaining about why dogs are overweight and what we can do to make a difference and how I could inform and educate their audience, and that they needed to get me on their show. Well, that was, I think, was the Thursday or the Friday, and I got nothing back. So over the weekend, I went off and I did a consultation for a client, and I was explaining again a follow-up email to the radio station about this dog that was literally eating the house from the inside out with separation anxiety, why it happened and how we fixed it. So I sent that off. Well, on the Monday morning, I got a call from the researchers, and they do like a little mini interview. You don't know it's not set up like that, but obviously they're checking that you can speak okay and that you're okay over the phone, that you're going to be a good guest. So that was the Monday. On the Wednesday, I was then featured on the show. I went up to the studios in London, as I say, introduced as a dog training expert, because that's what I told them that I was. And I then spoke and gave advice to over 4 million listeners.
Wow. That is a wonderful story. And what I took out of that is you didn't give up. You kept sending them information, and you became really creative in your headlines. And it paid off, and being able to link with what they were looking for.
That's it. I think that's what we have to do, isn't it, Tim? We have to get creative, and you have to keep on. The thing to remember, and what I've learnt now in all these years of doing so much in the media, is that it's not because they don't necessarily like your story idea or the way that you've come across. It's just that they're busy. So your emails probably got buried in, we know in our inboxes, emails get buried and we think, oh yeah, I'm interested in that. And then we forget about it. So yeah, you do have to follow up and not take it personally.
God, yeah. So, it's just kind of half the battle is finding someone with a story that would be interested in you, and then the other kind of half of the battle is creating a headline so that your email stands out above the others. And you'd mentioned writing something about podgy dogs and whatnot. Here in South Carolina in the States, I probably said my big fat dog needs to get on the diet. Something not really great. But how do you kind of create an attention grabbing headline? What's the skill to do that?
That's a good question, Tim, because if we don't do that, then of course our emails are not opened. So it is in fact the most important thing that we do. So it has to, a good headline has to tell the journalist in that one sentence what the story is about. So you have to be concise and specific. And say, for example, if you're a heating engineer, you could put something like 3 little known ways to save on heating bills. Or if you was a health and diet expert, it could be lose weight fast with this rare spice. Or say that you were a HR consultant, for example, you could come up with 5 powerful strategies for hiring the perfect employee. So this has told the journalist straight away exactly what this story is about, so they know whether it's going to be relevant to them or not. And if it is, of course, they're going to open up that email and look further.
Wow, so they need to be kind of short and concise, quick tips, something that resonates, that it's going to be a fast process. Here's your shortcut. And powerful strategies, things around that. That seems to kind of be the buzzwords, right?
It is. And what they love is that, anything that's new, it's a new way of looking at something, or it's a fresh idea, or it's saving people time and money, or it could be that there's statistics. They love statistics, the media, because obviously it's credible stuff. So it could be that there's a new survey or statistics that have been released that you then put the headline about that. And then you may be saying that that's not your experience. So you may be blowing away a myth, for example. So whatever it is, whatever the angle you're coming up with, now bearing in mind you've already researched the right reporter or the journalist, it could be the producer of a TV program or a radio show or a podcast, so you know about them, you know about what they're looking for, so of course you know that when you put that headline it's going to be relevant to them.
Of course, absolutely. And you'd mentioned in your story, with your dogs and how you kind of came into this, but have you always wanted to be an entrepreneur while you were growing up?
Wow, that's interesting because, to be honest, Tim, I think I was in my 30s before I even knew what an entrepreneur was. I'd never heard of the word. And I think I'm a little bit different than the normal entrepreneur because I didn't grow up thinking, oh, I can't work for other people. I've got to have my own business. I've got to do it my own way. Growing up, I thought, wow, what you do is you get yourself a good job and you work hard and you climb the ladder and you get promoted. And that's really what happened for me. And so it was actually, and not until I had a health issue whereby they thought I had multiple sclerosis, and thankfully it wasn't, that I actually looked for something alternative rather than the conventional medication. And that's how I got into the complementary therapy field where, how to heal yourself using natural remedies and different techniques like that, that I suddenly thought, do you know what, that's what I want to do. So when I transitioned from corporate America, so to speak, I actually did it because I had a passion and a love for what I discovered about how to heal yourself and what I wanted to share with other people.
Wow. So you really kind of blew that myth out of the water that, entrepreneurs are born and they've, as a baby, you're walking around as an entrepreneur and you're selling your milk and whatever it might be. Is your story is very different, and that you never really thought about it, and you just found yourself, later in life in your 30s, and the rest is history.
Well, that's right. And that's so true. And then when I transitioned from having my complementary therapy business, I then transitioned because of my dogs. I became a professional dog trainer because I had this passion and I was on a mission so that they were going nowhere. So that's how I then transitioned into my second business. And now, of course, my third business, getfreepublicitytoday.com, is all about helping other people how to get featured, which I have had, for the last 10 plus years.
Well, I'm sure you get lots of support in your third business, but were the people around you in the beginning of your first business very supportive? Or did they say, Sharon, you've lost your mind. What are you doing?
I think people have always been a little bit puzzled in the fact that I have done things that people don't normally do. So, for example, when I did that Radio 2 appearance, now bearing in mind, when you look at the cold hard facts here, I had no dog training website. I had no dog training business. It was a hobby. I'd been doing it with my own dogs. I had been doing it with other people's dogs and been seeing amazing results. But I wasn't waiting for somebody to validate me and tell me I was good at it or tell me that it was okay to do it. I just knew what I was doing was making a difference. I had that self-belief. So when I went to go for this opportunity, one, I never thought in advance how many people were going to listen to me because that was far too scary. The first time I knew that there was over 4 million people listening was when the researcher was escorting me out of the building saying, well, that was great, Sharon, our 4,000 plus 4 million, not 4,000, 4 million plus listeners will have loved that. But I never entertained that concept of all those people listening beforehand. And the other thing is what I was really wanting to say here, Tim, was that when I was going for this opportunity, I was very, very selective of who I spoke to and shared that information to, because I knew enough about the fact that with people, that when you share an idea or something that you're doing, what they reflect back to you is how it would feel for them if they were in your situation. So people will reflect back their fears and what if it goes wrong and oh, this isn't a good thing to do. And people are so lovely in the fact that they think they're doing you a favour. They're trying to stop you from making a fool of yourself. So if I'd have told too many people I was going on national radio as a dog training expert, they would have said, "Well, what you're talking about? You're a complimentary therapist. Where are you coming from on this?" So I was very, very selective of who I told. So there was probably one or two people that I shared that information with, and they were the people that I knew that would be supportive. So that's what I always recommend people do. When you're going to do something that's out of the ordinary, then don't share it with too many people. It's a fragile time for you. I could have been influenced if I'd have told enough people. I could have started to have the doubt creep in myself. So that's why I stayed clear of sharing it with too many people. In fact, what I did do, Tim, is after the event, there were people that heard me anyway and couldn't believe that they were listening to me. And then there were other people that I shared it with and they said, "Oh my God, you didn't do that, surely."
Well, that's great advice of being selective in who you share information with. And I agree with you 100% that many times it's about them and their own fear and not about us. And so when you mentioned that, yes, I could not agree more. Now, as being an entrepreneur, you have to be able to manage your money and your finances and a budget. How did you learn that? Did you learn that early on growing up, or did you just kind of stumble into it later on?
Yeah, I think growing up, I always had this awareness about money. I remember having my first job and helping out in the kitchen of a restaurant when I was 12, nearly 13. So I always had, some pocket money. I always wanted some pocket money. I never had that where entrepreneurs tend to think, "Oh, I'm going to go and make it myself." I didn't start my own business at 12 or 13, but I was happy to work for somebody else and earn some money. So I suppose I always had some form of awareness about money. But the best thing that I've really loved, and certainly when I came into doing my dog training business, where I started to then enter into the publicity world, is that it's free. So, or very, very low cost. So that was something that I really, really focused on, because I know, with marketing, it can be very, very expensive. But with publicity, as long as you're doing it right, then you're getting lots of exposure and lots of ROI, really good ROI, because you're not really spending anything out.
So you don't have to go out and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on some type of ad in the New York Times or another major publication. There's ways to do that's free.
Well, that's right. Yes. And that's when I came across that. And I could see that once I'd had that first radio interview. And just to say as well, because I think this is something that's quite good for people that are wanting to do this type of thing to hear, is that when I went for that, for the radio station there, as I explained, I was not set up in any shape or form. I had no website, I had no email address for the dog training. I really just had nothing. So on the back of that, I hardly got any business from that. But what I did get was huge credibility. So when I transitioned very quickly then into becoming a professional dog trainer, I could splatter on my marketing and on my then website and in my emails that I had been featured on BBC Radio 2. So that transition for me, that I was already positioned as an expert in my field.
Wow. So you came right out of, creating that first website with all of this huge support because you had been featured in all these areas. And that is wonderful. So everyone should take away that don't be afraid that you don't have anything. Just jump out there and then use that information and that the credentials that you get by being on a radio show or a television show or featured in a magazine or a newspaper and put that out there. And that's instant credibility.
That's right, Tim. And what I teach in my courses and that is I say to people, in an ideal world, you're going to be set up. You're going to have your website, and you're definitely going to have your freebie on the website, because what I love to do with media interviews is to use that media interview as a way of driving traffic to your website. And there's your lead magnet, isn't it? To start your sales funnel, where people are signing up for your free report or your free ebook. So it's a fantastic way of getting some really good, high quality subscribers. And when people are signing up because they've either seen you on TV or read your feature in a newspaper or listened to you on a radio station, you are already credible to them. It's like you've been endorsed by the media, which for people think is excellent. You must be really of a high caliber in order to be featured. And so they already think they know you. So there's a lot of these objections that are starting to just slip away because you're featured. So ideally, you want to get yourself set up. But what I do say is don't waste and overlook opportunities if they come, if you're not set up first of all.
Wow, you are the true expert in this field, Sharon. And along the way, you've picked up all these strategies, but have you also kind of been burdened with burnout and stress? Can you share a particular situation that was very, very mentally draining for you, and how did you cope?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing as a business owner is technology, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Getting used to technology. And yeah, that I've certainly, there's been times where it's just felt overwhelming with all the different technologies of putting together a website and then putting that lead magnet or that freebie on your website, and then creating your autoresponder series, and putting all the pieces together, all the moving parts together. So definitely with that, where that I think can sometimes be overwhelming. So what I decided to do way back is, again, for me, it's all about mindset. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. I think that's Henry Ford that said that, wasn't it? And I'm a big believer in that. So I decided to embrace technology and to enjoy technology. So I never complain about technology. I've built now, I think there's about 6 websites that I've now built. The one that you've seen, the getfreepublicitytoday.com, that's one that I've built. I build my websites. I set up my different moving parts. I've set up a couple of membership sites because I've embraced it. So I learn it, and I just really enjoy it.
Yeah, I think you have to embrace it. So many people who don't understand it may just fight against it, and that will continually put you in a position where you want to pull your hair out, where you just are always stressed. But I like the way your approach is to just embrace it. And looking back, you've done so many things, and I'm sure you've worked with lots of different clients. What's been the most fulfilling moment during this journey?
I think, to be honest with you, Tim, I think it's that whole appearance on that first radio show. The fact that I always like to have this belief that anything is possible. So it's not just anything, but everything is possible. Well, that's the belief that I really nurture. And so I like to do things that are not the norm. So, that whole experience of getting onto that radio station, that national radio station, when I just didn't have the credentials or the so-called experience or the qualifications. I mean, I'm mainly self-taught in what I do with the dog training, so it's all against the grain. And I love that. And I think that in that early stages where I was able to prove to myself that I could really reach high and get it, where a lot of people would have said to me, you've got to be in business for 10 plus years before you can do that, or you should really start with local media. You shouldn't go for the big boys like that. So I think really, Tim, that set me up. So I think I have to say that's been an amazing experience for me.
Sharon, that is very inspiring, and I'm willing to bet that there are many listeners out there who are so happy to hear your message that everything is possible, because there are so many times when we just kind of get down on ourselves and we start to question. And like you said, we have those false messages that we have to, been an expert in something for 10, 20 years before we can go out and let the world know. And you're saying that's not the case. Go out and just do it. Almost like Nike, the athletic apparel, just do it is their kind of slogan. And that seems to be what you're saying.
It is. And I think, this isn't, because sometimes people say, well, is that right? Because this is not about trying to pull the wool over the media's eyes. If you're not legit and if you're not passionate and if you can't come up with the goods, of course, you might get one interview and then that will be it. They won't touch you again. So it's not about, tricking the media here. It's about sharing your passion, and it's really about self-belief, knowing that you can make a difference. As a business owner, when we're first starting out in particular, we're so passionate and so excited about what we're doing, and we get asked so many different questions, and we think, wow, doesn't everybody know that? That's easy, isn't it? But people don't. So just that self-belief, just that giving yourself a pat on the back and knowing that you can make a difference.
Wow, Sharon, I could go on and probably have a 2-hour show with you. You have so much great knowledge and words of wisdom. But we're at the end of the show. But before we leave, I would like you to tell the listeners a little bit about where they can find you online, your website, and all that great stuff.
Yeah, well, people, if they come to my website, which is getfreepublicitytoday.com, they can sign up for a freebie, which is a report that explains exactly how to write an attention-grabbing press release that creates win-win situations with the media. So this will set people up so they can start straight away, because there is a format in order to set up a really good press release. So I explain exactly how to do that in that report. And then people can also find me on Facebook at Get Free Publicity Today, and I've got a YouTube channel, Get Free Publicity Today, and I'm Publicity Sharon on Twitter.
Incredible. So everyone, be sure to go to getfreepublicitytoday.com. Thank you, Sharon. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Tim. It's been so great to be on your show.
Absolutely. Have a great day. Take care.
Want more entrepreneurial tips? Go to timlascos.com.